Welcome to A Leader Story, where we explore the unique paths of extraordinary leaders. In each episode, we ask the same 7 questions to our guests, revealing the diverse journeys and insights that shape their success. Join us as we uncover the stories that make each leader's experience truly one of a kind. Today, we are humbled to have Kim Konotchick, a distinguished leader in the tech industry. Currently, Kim is the General Manager for Azure Mid-Market Data and AI at Microsoft. With a leadership career spanning roles at Teradata and Qualcomm, and a commitment to education through UC San Diego Extension and the Sherry Blair Foundation, Kim has been at the forefront of innovation and strategic growth. Join us as we explore her impactful leadership story and insights. Kim, what is one decision you made that was a turning point for your leadership?
Wow, that is something that there's been many in my career, but one that stood out to me that really kind of changed my trajectory was I had been working in a team for 8 years, loved what I was doing. Everyone knew who I was because I had a lot of impact within that team, but I one day was looking for a new opportunity to try something new, and I spoke to our leadership at that time, and he gave me really great advice, and he was very direct and said, "Nobody knows who you are outside of the
Yeah.
area that I was," and he's like, "So you need to get out there. You need to start introducing yourself." Amongst his staff. And that's what I did. So that was a turning point for me as I went around not looking for jobs, really just informational interviews. I wanted to learn about other areas um, in the company. And when I did that, I came across one of the managers who tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, would you be interested in taking on this leadership role within my team?" And the lesson I learned from that is networking is so critical to everything
So
that you
critical.
do. And I've taken that to everything that I've done, leaning in where I can. There's been other opportunities that have come to me. There's a TDWI chapter that we formed in San Diego, and initially was reached out to become part of the founding board of that. And my first reaction was, "Oh, I really don't have time for this. This sounds really amazing, but I really don't have time." Um, I remembered again, I needed to kind of push myself and lean out there. Best decision I ever made because I made fantastic relationships through that. It got me deeper into the technology around data and AI that I was passionate about. And that was it. So networking, and pushing yourself, leaning in where there's opportunities. And that was a turning point for me.
That's really good feedback. If we could double click on that a little bit,
Mhm.
I think especially in the tech industry, it's hard to flex in that networking space for some folks because you may be shy or you may feel like you have anything to offer. Like just in terms of like the networking side, like it almost sounds like marketing to some folks. What are some of the things that you did to kind of get past that? Like, if that was even a thing, because it sounds like you weren't doing it before until that feedback came, so it wasn't part of your toolkit, I would say. What did you do to kind of like flex that muscle?
Yeah, it was really just putting myself out there. I wasn't comfortable doing it. It wasn't natural for me to go out and do that. I think it's definitely like any muscle has become more of a natural for me. But initially it was really awkward going out there, especially with those first meetings I set up. Some of the managers I met with were just confused on why I was in front of them trying to learn. It's become more of a norm now. I see it within the company I'm with today, um, where people will come and just they're trying to learn, and I love that. The introverts in there, it's taking it on as just a challenge for yourself. Look how you can stretch yourself, and and good things will come. You'll learn something along the way. You can definitely do more than you think you can, is what I've found.
That's good. That's really good feedback. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, second question, Kim, how do you foster innovation and creativity within your team?
Yeah, this is something that's very important to me because with creativity and innovation, we solve problems better and it creates a more lively, collaborative environment. So, this is something that with every team that I've had, I've tried to build in some form or fashion. One of the teams that I built when I was with Qualcomm, it was a data COE, a BI COE at the time. And we had a co-location. So this was when we all were going into an office, which is a little foreign to me these days. But we had a giant whiteboard and we called it the Dream List board. And anyone could write whatever they wanted on there to go explore and see what we could do, kind of hackathon, sort of kick the tires around different technologies. And we put that up there, and there was something very satisfying going up and crossing it off. And we'd take Friday afternoons, we would try to block it as best we could. I did put a block on everyone's calendar for it. Meetings would come up that would take precedence, so it wasn't always able to protect it. But for the most part, we were pretty successful with it. And we just choose, and people would self-form teams around it. So what came from that was the first MPP database that came into Qualcomm. Later, it was Hadoop and bringing Hadoop in and finding novel ways that we could use it in real ROI versus just bringing in the new shiny tool. We wanted to have good real value around it. So that's one way. Team chats, connecting people is another way I do it, and participating in it as a leader to where it creates a lively discussion where people feel safe and can trust that environment. And then I use design thinking techniques when I'm trying to brainstorm problems. I have a whole little kit with all my different colored sticky notes and smelly pens. I use a lot of those design thinking techniques when we really need to come up with new ways of looking at it and getting out of our normal way of thinking. So those are just a few of the techniques that we do. Hackathons happen here and there, and I encourage that across the team and good discussions across the team that aren't always directly related to what we're doing, because you'll often find you'll bring that value in and learn something along the way.
That's really good. So I ask a little bit of a deeper question on that offer. So as part of driving that innovation, obviously there's a managing up component to that, right?
Yeah.
So getting the executive buy-in for the team to have the time to do that, how do you accomplish that? How do you get that alignment?
I've been fortunate to have leaders that have valued innovation and creativity, and you've got to be respectful. It comes down to performance at the end of the day. If you're meeting the needs of the business and you can carve off a little extra time, that will boost morale and bring new capabilities to the company. It's a win-win for everyone. I think for me, it's taking those small steps, the low hanging fruit, proving what value that it can bring. And then once you do that, there's a lot more support and a little bit of backing off on, okay, yeah, that works. I'm gonna let Kim do what she needs to there.
That's really good. That's really good. So I think that leads well into the next question because you talked about performance. So Kim, how do you balance driving results with maintaining a positive team culture?
At the end of the day, this is what we're getting paid to do, and performance absolutely matters. So, first off, is having a clear vision and communicate, and check in and make sure that what we're going towards is well understood amongst the teams. I think that's step number one that I would do. We need ways to measure and share back how we're performing along. If we're going for a particular goal, how are we doing against that goal? Making sure we carve off time to share successes as well as not failures but lessons learned. We don't want to have just all the positive. We want to see where we have learned so that people don't fall in those same pitfalls along the way. Yeah. And then we need to make sure we're leaving room for skilling. In the technology field, it is moving so fast, especially with AI right now. Every day
Yeah.
there's something new. So we need to make sure we're carving off time where we're at today. And this, I can't take credit for this. This is what Microsoft does is they carve off a couple Fridays a month that are dedicated for learning, and hugely valuable. Hugely valuable. Same issue on trying to protect that time. It's not always easy, but just even having the space to have that is enormously helpful. And then you've got to make sure you have the right people in
Mm.
there as well. Sometimes there aren't fits, and that's where performance management comes in. You want to help them along the way as much as you can. At the end of the day, if it's not a fit, it's not a fit.
Yeah.
That's important and can't be neglected. And then we got to celebrate. We got and have fun. So it's a combination of we're all rowing together towards a goal. We're making sure we're on the path that we want to be, and then we're celebrating our successes.
That's awesome. Yeah, that sounds like the perfect recipe for positive team and still driving results. That's great insight. To take a little bit of a turn on questions, Kim, can you describe a moment when you had to make a tough ethical decision?
This was this is one of the harder questions for me to answer because we're faced with it every day. At first, I struggle with okay, where have I had a challenge? And I did have to dig back a little bit further. And what I also found, this is a muscle that you build as well. So, and it comes down to having a good moral compass and framework. And when you have those in place, you find making decisions a whole lot easier. A situation that I can call back on was around a performance management issue. And it was an employee who was very well liked, um, good energy within the team, but really struggling with the role. And it was someone that wasn't hired in, but more was moved over without their even say of was this a fit for them. So we did gather around the team to try to help this individual as much as possible, and the team really did like. But at the same time, I was getting feedback of it being a pull away from everyone else. So it was becoming a little unfair for the team. Difficult situation when it's someone with the right attitude and well liked, but not cutting it. And at the end of the day, it was looking at what was right for the overall team, the company, and the individual themselves. It was understanding what the problem was. Was this a skill set, a behavioral attitude? It wasn't behavior, it wasn't attitude, it truly was skill set. And the person just was not in the right role for what they should have been doing. And it was collecting input from team members in a anonymous way as possible. I'll do that. I'll look for themes. Even when we collect third-party feedback from folks, if one person's saying one thing, I'll pay attention, but I'm really looking for the themes because it could be one person just rubbed the wrong way.
Yep.
So I'm looking at that, looking at what the options are. Is this someone that we believe that we could train up and it would be a success in the long run? Is this someone that we want to maybe try a different role for, or help them find another role elsewhere? Ultimately, aligning to that, I did move forward. I had a heart-to-heart conversation with the individual. We did put a plan in place to try to get them to a place that they needed to be. At the end of the day, they didn't meet where the role needed to be, and so I did help the individual find a role for them that was more of a fit. And one thing I'd add to this is you always have to reflect back on did I make the right decision? Because it's hard sometimes in the moment. I believe I did ethically. I did the ethical for the team. I did it for the individual, and I did it for the company. I ran into that person a couple years later, also with the same company, and he ran up to me and just thanked me. He's like, I was miserable. And it was one of those things he didn't realize how miserable he was. He was really trying to make it work, but it just wasn't where he wanted to be. And so you always never feel great when you have to performance manage someone out. But that was one of the first where I was like, okay, definitely. I followed my gut, my moral compass, and that was probably one of the first times I ever had to do one of those kind of difficult performance management. I've had several in my career after that fact, but that was a good learning point for me. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it becomes a muscle of if you're good in your values and in your moral compass, decisions will come easier for you in the end.
Yeah, that's really good. I think what I've learned in my leadership journey also, and because that's always the performance side, the people management side of that is always difficult, especially if you're from a Myers-Briggs perspective, you're a feeler, right?
Yeah,
Which I
yeah,
am. I think you are too, probably.
probably.
And and that being said, every time where it has been that tough thing, I've had the same result as you. The person has moved on to something better that was better for them, right? That
Yeah,
they, uh, long term, from a career perspective, it was the right move because they just weren't in the right place. And
yeah,
you, as a leader, were doing, if you kept them there, is doing them a disservice
yeah.
to not find that next thing. Yeah. Because unfortunately, those crucial conversations sometimes are just easier to be left undone. But
Yes.
in the long term, just the stress that it adds to that person as an individual and your team, right? Because
Yeah.
that becomes you have to think about it holistically, right? So that's great.
Yeah. It can be that demoralizing to the team, even if it's a well liked person,
Yeah,
because it's someone who's just not rowing as hard as the others, and it's tough. So it is truly looking out for everyone in this
yeah,
situation.
that's really good. So I think this plays well into the next question. Uh, Kim, what role does feedback play in your leadership? How do you both give and receive it?
Yeah, it's huge. Brene Brown had in her book Dare to Lead. She says clear is kind, and I think that's a great way of saying it. I've always looked at feedback as a gift. It doesn't always feel like a gift at the time, whether you're on the receiving end or giving end, but it truly is a gift. When giving feedback, I'm direct, I'm empathetic. I try to be, and I mentioned earlier, I'm looking for third party feedback themes or things I've observed, and I'm I'm sharing that versus a hey, so and so just said this. That's not valuable. That's not something somebody can do something with. So I'm going to share feedback that is truly going to be constructive and something that can be useful to a person. Receiving it, as I mentioned, can sting, but this is how you grow. And if you can keep that mindset of, okay, take it in. If you need to take a day to kind of get over the feedback of what you got, you do what you need to do, but then you need to get right back and take it to heart. Where the feedback come from matters too. If it's someone you respect or if it's feedback that you've heard multiple times, then there's something you probably need to do to change. And again, looking at that as it's a gift because it's hard for the person to give the feedback, just as hard as it is for you to give feedback to someone else. If you know the intention is true and meant in a good way, then it's the best possible thing that you can do is to give people and write them. Not just in a negative, in a positive as well. Got to make sure we're giving the positive feedback equally. Sometimes we or employees can be working hard towards something, and we get so used to how good that person is that there's a neglect of not necessarily giving the attaboys as we should, and we've got to remember that
Right.
we can't be doing that because people need it. People need that input, and know what they should continue to keep doing and where they need to pivot.
That's really good insight. That's really good. So next question. Kim, how do you continue to grow and develop as a leader?
Continuous learning. At Microsoft, we call it having a growth mindset. It's looking at yourself as objectively as you can, and seeing how you can do better. That could be when I was early in sales, I once went on a call with, I was the solution architect, and I was on the call with an AE. And after he turned to me and said, "Okay, how could we do better?" And I was like a little taken back because we did great, in my opinion. But at the time, I'm like, that was such an awesome question to ask. Is there's always something you can do better. So what can we do to do better and sharpen? So that's one of the things, is just that, having that mindset. Two, I'm connected to with my peers and network. I have a group of a couple women that I meet with on a monthly basis, and we just share. So I always come away with learning something from them, and I always come away with feeling that my bucket's been filled as well. So having the human connection within your network, not necessarily within your work structure, although that's incredibly helpful too, and I do have that. But having that outside perspective is incredibly helpful. And I've found I've learned a lot from other leaders is one of the best ways for me to learn. Big fan of one-on-ones, learning from my team, learning from my employees. I learn a lot from them. And then books, podcasts. I'm a big fan of Adam Grant, Harvard Business Reviews. My degree was in business management, so I have a passion about this and how to improve. And the topic of leadership has always been an area of interest and something I want to be as best a leader as I can be and have as much impact in that role.
That's awesome. That's great insights. So leading the last question, you lead well into this one, just based off what you just said. Kim, what leadership book has influenced you the most and why?
Can't choose just one.
It's funny that you say that, because this ends up being the hardest question for every guest so far.
I know. There are a few I'll call out,
That's
but
okay.
it's and as I mentioned before, I really enjoy podcasts and readings. Those all factor in. But in terms of books, I mentioned Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, and that's about vulnerability and having more of that human connection as a leader. Drive by Daniel Pink, around what are those intrinsic motivators. Some surprises, some not surprising. Just a good reminder of what motivates people, and it's different for everyone. So understanding that for everyone. Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek, and that's about creating a trusted environment where people feel safe. And then Made to Stick. This is a little even beyond leadership, but it's about getting your messages and ideas to stick. Because I certainly within my career have had ideas that I've thrown out that just haven't gotten the traction as I would have liked. And this book kind of puts into a little bit of a form of, okay, maybe if you pitched it a little differently, that idea would stick. And that's by two brothers, last name Heath. So those are the ones that first came to mind, but there's so many.
That's
books.
really good. That's really good. Well, that was the last question. But Kim, thank you so much for being part of this experiment, being part of this time to share your valuable insights as a leader, and pass them on to the up and coming generation, and really help to fine tune even the current generation of leaders. I think these type of conversations and insights are important, especially hearing it directly from the person, successful leadership like yourself. And just again, thank you so much for your time, and really looking forward to sharing this with everybody else in the A Leader Story ecosystem.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. I've really enjoyed this very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was awesome to have Kim as a guest today. Her insights around networking were spot on. As Kim said, networking is so critical to everything that you do. Thank you for joining us on this week's edition of A Leader Story. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe to help more people discover these inspiring leadership stories. And don't forget to tune in every Tuesday for new episodes. See you next week, and keep writing your own unique leadership story.